Leadership is a two-part choice. Your conscious decision to step up and lead, and their conscious decision to follow you. Just because they come into work every day, just because they're on payroll, just because they do their to-do list, that doesn't mean they're choosing to follow you. But when they do, there's nothing else like it.
Executives and business owners and the concept of leadership naturally go hand in hand. But while these leaders are busy leading, who's leading them? And how do they know if their leadership style is effective and sustainable? Our own leader, Melanie Wilt, sits down with her executive coach, Ken Jacobs, to talk leadership traits, strategies, and habits that he incorporates to help leaders reach their full potential. That's all ahead on today's episode of Shooting the Shift. Hello and welcome to Shooting the Shift, a venture here at Shiftology Communication where our team of communication professionals take time to reflect, share, and provide insights into what we do each and every day to help our clients reach more, convince more, and win more. I'm Dan Toland, Director of Virtual Experiences here at Shiftology, and we're glad you're joining us for today's episode titled Leading the Leaders.
We are joined by Ken Jacobs, who is my agency coach and a leadership consultant and coach. He's out in New Jersey, and we've been working together for several years here. I asked him if he wanted to come on the podcast, and he said, I'd love to come on and talk about a leadership topic. Thanks for joining us, Ken.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing that we've been working together a long time, and it's a pleasure to work with you.
Well, Ken, why don't you start by telling our listeners a little bit about your progression through your career and kind of how you got to the point now where you are a leadership coach and coaching agency owners like me in your current role.
So I started in the business right after graduation from college, Syracuse, Newhouse, worked at a great firm called DAY Public Relations. It was led by two true agency glass ceiling breakers. There were not many women agency owners in 1969. Jean Way Schoonover, Barbara Way Hunter. They are legendary, iconic in the business. I learned a lot about their different leadership styles. Then I wanted something more entrepreneurial, so I joined Marina Marr Communications. I then went to a creative boutique, Maloney and Fox. I had a year at Lippy Taylor, and then I needed a change. And I worked with leadership coaches myself to create a new vision for what I wanted to do, what I was good at, what would be fulfilling. And it was serving the agency world through coaching, consulting, and training. And that was in 2006, and here we are today. And I have never looked back, and I've never had a more fulfilling career. And I've never been happier.
So Ken and I met through Counselors Academy.
Absolutely.
I think we actually met through a Facebook group first, and I kind of interviewed him and hired him as my agency coach, and he just got it. Agency leadership can be a little lonely. We have a lot of different things coming at us, different people to coach, challenges and goals that we want to set for ourselves. And we have our own gaps and blind spots that we need help with. So the relationship that we've had over the last few years has really helped us with business development, with my ability to coach members of our team, and hopefully help them do a better job of coaching some of their reports. And that has really changed the game for us in terms of how we do biz dev year round. So thank you, Ken, for putting us on the right path with that.
Well,
I've given you a referral or two.
Thank you. But I want to send it back to you. And this is a big part of leadership. You know, truly confident leaders are open to change, are open-minded, are willing to hear things and try them in a new way and experiment. And as a client, you've been all of that. So, you know, the thing about coaching is that I always say I can take pride in the work and my clients' results, but I don't take the credit. They get the credit. And there's just this ratio of the more open-minded, the more willing to listen, willingness to consider, willingness to change and do things, you know, in a different way. Those leaders get get greater results.
So, as we're rolling on traits, what are some other traits of
Yeah.
great leaders that you've been exposed to and worked with over the years?
Well, really having a vision. What do we want our agency to be? What kind of workplace do we want it to be? What kind of clients do we want to do work for? What comes after what comes next? And that must come from the leader. Like some things, some leaders share responsibility. You're leading leaders, but in setting the pace, setting the tone, the vision, that's number one. Number two, I think, is inspiration. People have asked me, how do I motivate my staffers? How do I motivate my leaders? You can't. Motivation comes from within, but you can inspire and you can create career paths that tap into people's strengths and align with their passions. So definitely inspiration. I think always, and this aligns with vision, focusing on the future, not being satisfied with where we are today, but having and not focusing too much on the past, focusing on where we want to be next month, next quarter, next year. I don't know if in the agency space, and I could be wrong, if you can look 5 years out, because my gosh, who knows what could happen. We've learned that in the last 5 years. But I do think, a 1 year plan, a 3 year plan is doable. I think consistently communicating trust, you've got to, we know as an energy coach, everything is reciprocal, energy mindset, and trusting your people. Employees are more engaged, more willing to work towards that vision when they feel trusted and they have trust in you as a leader. Leaders' trust can't be assumed. Just because you are the boss or the CEO, whatever your title is, don't assume people trust you. You have to earn it every day. Next, respect in any relationship. We've got to have respect. And you've got to have a relationship with your team. And it's got to
Mhm.
be somewhat mutual. We are still living in an era of employee disengagement. It's gotten a little better. In October of 23, Gallup did a report. The level of employee disengagement globally was like 70%. It's crazy. So if your level of employee engagement is 65 or 60 or 55%, you happy with that? Can you do what you need to do as an agency if your level of employee disengagement is 50%? I don't think so. And trust and respect are two of the factors that drive engagement.
Well, you
You want
mentioned
some?
trust and respect, and that seems like that would come naturally to those in public relations, since relationships is the very heart of what we do. But I think a lot of times agency owners or those in communication leadership roles might be so outwardly focused that we forget that we need to have those relationships internally focused as well. There's a really important balance with the trust and respect that goes both directions,
Yep.
intrinsically and
Yep.
extrinsically.
And I tell people, some leaders feel not respected or not trusted by some team members. They do. And I say, well, if I had that team member alone, how would they rank you as being a trusted leader, a leader who would never throw me under the bus, a leader I can count on, I can go to with any topic, any issue? And does the leader consistently communicate respect? We do 360s sometimes in some coaching engagements, and the leader is they're sometimes disappointed that their people don't give them an A for trust and respect. Getting leadership performance feedback is so important. We often get it from our clients. We are smart enough to find out how happy they are, but we don't always get it from our teams. And that's because we're afraid of what we'll hear. Some of us, they may hear there are things that they do that their teams really value, that really mean a lot to them, that they didn't even realize. And there are things they should keep doing as a leader, and that's great. And then there are what's not working in the person's leadership and what effect is that having on you or on the agency or communications organization, and what may happen if they don't do anything about it. And then the last thing we ask, what could happen if this person made some changes. They don't become the world's greatest leader, but if they just made some substantial changes, and then we create a report, we walk them through the report, and it's sometimes difficult for a leader to read and to hear with anything when we're not hitting the mark. And sometimes when we go through the report, they'll say, well, they're wrong. They don't understand me, misunderstanding me. They're just not getting it. No, I know who that was. They just don't like, all this.
And that I think is kind of a natural reaction a lot of times, right? But a leader has to be open enough and emotionally intelligent enough to go, okay, don't get triggered by this. Take a
Right.
step back, take the time to process it. It hurts a little bit, but let's see how we can fix this and move forward.
Well, what I say to them is, okay, maybe you're right, and all this feedback is wrong. It's all interpretation about you. It's wrong. Okay. How can you achieve what you want to achieve at your agency or your comms organization or your nonprofit or wherever you're toiling in the communication trade? How can you achieve it if some of them feel this way about it? And what are you willing to do about it? And that takes the edge off. That I tell them they may be wrong, they're not, but they may be wrong. But how will you achieve what you need to achieve?
What are some of the traits that you find maybe from those feedback loops or in other places that get in the way of effective leadership?
A lot of things, maybe surprisingly, lack of confidence or fear or worry or anxiety. Those are not attractive traits. What I mean by that is not in a physical way, but followers are attracted to certain kinds of leaders. Courage, for example, is very attractive. But your people want your courage as a leader. They're hoping for it. They're yearning for your courage and your confidence. But at the same time, their antenna, is on high for fear, and they will sense it. I think lack of focus, always pursuing that shiny new penny, is not a good thing, and it can create some discomfort. There's one thing saying, I have the confidence to explore some new things for us. Let's not fear change. Let's get on board. Let's understand, like with AI, but knowing how to apply it. Some don't know how to give truly constructive feedback. They give what they call constructive critique, and they immediately go to the critique. They leave the constructive behind, and then your followers just shut out. They don't want to hear more, right? Because we don't know how to give feedback that keeps people open and that signals to them, I'm going to share some feedback that is honest and kind and direct and diplomatic because I know you're capable of making these changes and I know the impact that can have. So some are still into command and control. Well, I'm the founder. Well, I'm the CEO. I know the way. It's got to be my way. And those leaders can be successful initially, but after a while, it takes such energy to be around that kind of leadership that people eventually leave. I think when they manage rather than lead people, there's a difference between managing and leading. Leaders who complain about their teams or complain about certain generations rather than really leading them.
Those are some traps we fall into because there is some rhetoric around generations and the things jump out at you that might be traits that are different. And just because it's different doesn't make it wrong. And that's a trap I fall into at times. Like, oh, well, those Gen Zs or, oh, well, those millennials. Well, I'm sure there's some things about us Gen Xers that the greatest generation were like scratching their heads thinking, what are these latchkey kids doing here?
Every generation looks back on their careers and thinks, oh, my bosses didn't lead me. My bosses didn't manage me. I did it all myself. Not true. Not true. Not true. Everybody, and I was led again by these two wonderful agency leaders who had different styles from one another, but again, saw greatness in me, which encouraged me to sort of shoot for the stars. But every generation needs to understand. I mean, I remember the complaints about millennials. I did a roundtable about understanding and leading millennials. We had some boomers in the group and we had some Gen Xers. The boomers were like taking notes and nodding and interested, whatever. And the Gen Xers, just the steam was coming out of their ears. And I said, to lead people requires them to follow you. If you're mad at them, they're not following. What's the value in complaining? Understand. I mean, I think to your point, some things are just individuals are different and they require a different leadership approach. So I think it's an imperative. It's a business imperative to understand the generations that you're leading so that they want to follow.
One of the programs that I do in my speaking out in the community and among our clients is a session I call Multi-Generational Teams That Work.
Ooh.
And I had been to enough of these gripe fests about the different generations that I thought, well, let's take a different approach here and find the things that bring the generations together so that we can overcome these challenges and differences. I bet I've been doing that session for 10 years and I still get requests to do it.
Wow.
And it's we always have one of the best conversations in that workshop too.
Well, I think, I think, when we think of leadership traits, one that I didn't mention, but I think a certain inherent optimism and positivity or reasonable positivity can be a very strong leadership trait. And so believing that I can get value in my organization by tapping the best of my Gen Xers, the best of my millennials, and the best of Gen Z, you will benefit from what many of them do well generationally. There's a lot of value to get from these differences by appreciating the best of the differences and knowing how to lead each gen, but it's also, being willing to individualize your leadership style. If I want to be a uber leader, a great leader, I'm going to understand what makes Melanie tick. I'm going to understand her values. So even when I give an assignment or a task or ask her to take something on, I'm going to tap some of those things. How can I align roles, responsibilities, tasks based on that knowledge? So leadership takes some brain power and it takes time to think about, but it's all an investment, right?
Yes.
When you invest, you expect to get something back. And I think the same thing is true if you take sort of a conscious view of leadership.
So, what are some of the strategies you employ to help leaders like me and others reach their full leadership potential?
So, number one, I am energy leadership coach. We use the Energy Leadership Index, which quite simply allows the leader to understand what beautiful combination of energy levels they're tapping in their everyday life, and most importantly, when they're going through some kind of stress. Because we don't believe in good and bad energy. Every level serves a certain purpose. And, it is about being aware of, well, okay, I'm in level 1 or 2 now. I'm in stress. 3 deep cleansing breaths, or change of scenery, or walk around the office, but I'm not going to think and I'm not going to speak until I'm out of this level because I'll say something I regret. And that awareness, such a helpful tool.
Continue on the tips and tricks of the trade on strategies you use to help leaders beyond the energy thing.
Be aware of and replace anxiety and fear and worry, which always gets in the way. We help many of them learn how to say anything to anyone. Here's this business, right? We're asking clients for $50,000, $100,000, $250,000, 500, whatever it is, right? For a full thing. You would think we would have the most courageous people in the world. It's not true. And I've worked with so many leaders where they say, oh, I could never say that to a client. You could never tell a client that their bill is 2 months past due. I could never tell that to my partner, my business partner, or my life partner. I could never say that to a team member. Well, what's the worst that can happen? It can be very powerful language. But learning how to say anything to anyone and at risk of repetition in a way that is direct, kind, honest, and diplomatic. And, one thing we help agency leaders with is not only biz dev, as a consultant, here's how to do it. We do some of that. But also as a coach, what energy are you bringing to the pursuit of business, right? Are you afraid? Ooh, I'm going to sound like a used car salesman. No insult to the used car salesman. Are you afraid to make the ask? Is your energy, oh, we really want to work with you, like a little puppy dog? Or is your energy, we've helped other clients with the same problem you're having. I think we could help you. Feels like this could be a good partnership. What do you think? So if you bring that puppy dog, like, we're dying to work with you, you get clients who want that. And I don't know that you want that.
I think back to the first 3 or 4 years in business, and there was a
Yeah,
lot of puppy dog, just because I would work with anybody and it didn't
right.
matter if they had a budget, but today, as we've grown and evolved, we can be a lot more selective. We can say no, we can go, partner with those who we mutually benefit. I don't want to do work for somebody who's paying us for something that doesn't
Right.
help them reach their goals. If I
Right.
can help reach their goals, then they're meeting their business goals or their outreach goals or their engagement goals, and that's worth money to them.
Absolutely. And, again, I think it's if you want clients who want true partners, who want their agency to tell them not only what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. And that takes partnership, and that takes courage, and that takes being a counselor. And there's an energy behind all of that that I always say, why would a client believe you're worth your rates if you don't? So when they say, oh, you're too expensive, the energy shouldn't be resentful, nor should it be, well, I'll lower my rates. It should be maybe more, well, currently that's what our clients are happy to pay us. And so
Mhm.
we feel our rates are worthwhile and spot on. And if right now you choose not to invest with us, it's okay. Maybe in the future, some of the clients will say, you're right. You are worth it. Okay. And others will always try to find the cheapest agency. And the risk when you do business is that there's always going to be someone who's going to undercut you. So you're not going to build a long lasting, mutually beneficial relationship. And that is what you want. It's a little bit training, it's a little bit consulting, it's a little bit true coaching. It is much more about asking than about telling. And it is much more about the coaching client's journey and their willingness to do the heavy lifting.
You have really helped me with opening up some coaching habits. There was a book you recommended to me called The Coaching Habit. So what are some of those coaching habits that
Yeah.
you teach and use?
The key behind all of this is that when we tell someone what to do, they might not, they might write it down, they might take notes, but do we have skin in the game? We do light up a part of their brain when we tell someone what to do, but if I really want them to take action, I have to light up this part of the brain because that's the part of the brain where things like commitment, passion, creativity, collaboration, and memory live. If you tell them you're not lighting up this part of the brain, but if you ask, you light up that part of the brain that you want. And this has been proven through MRI studies. So let's put Melanie in the MRI, and let's say I'm the technician, and I say, Melanie, here's what you've got to do at Shiftology this year. And the MRI will have a little activity because we're talking about something she cares about. But if instead I say, what are 3 things you want to achieve next year for Shiftology communication and its clients? Fireworks, Katy Perry. And then I say, what are 3 actions you will definitely take? Katy Perry, fireworks. And then I say, how will it feel if you take those big steps? And then I always say, to misquote Miss Alicia Keys, this Melanie's brain is on fire. And all I had to do was ask open ended, empowering questions. As a leader, you want to go, I think, from trainer, teacher, teller to maybe mentor. But ultimately, in your leadership, you become a coach. And it's just asking, 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 asking the questions that ignite your followers' brain and that allow them to develop that problem solving muscle. And the beauty of that book, The Coaching Habit,
I
oh,
have it on my bookcase.
there you go.
It
Tell
is
us his name.
Coaching Habits, Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever.
I love the book, and I do recommend it to all my leadership clients. Many of our followers come to us They want us to solve their problems. Now, leaders who are driven maybe a little bit by ego will solve their problems because it feels good. You haven't served them as a leader. You haven't helped them build the confidence in their own problem solving skills. So, one of the many virtues of the book is that it gives you the questions you can use to get them thinking, get them out of your office, even if it's a virtual office, but in a good way, solving problems, coming to you with choices, coming back to you with strategies. And you've helped them learn, I can figure out more of this than I thought. That to me is a great gift as a leader, to give that to your people. And that means you're a leader who's focused more on being respected than being liked.
It's empowering.
Barry Rafferty, who I so admire, at one point was one of the only, there were four CEOs of global agencies at one point, and she was one of the four. I love a lot of her quotes and her wisdom, but what I really love is like leaders are liked, respected leaders are followed. And that is what I think we want as leaders.
So speaking of women and minority leaders, you've seen that evolve over your career. As you mentioned 1969, and I think of like civil rights movement and during that time and how much things have changed. And as a Gen Xer, I walked into a pretty easy time to be a woman in the public relations field, but I think there are still some obstacles out there for leaders who are women and minorities in particular.
No question.
What do you still see that leaders can help to work on issues, ways that we can help those who are coming after us or who are with us now?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think accept that many of us have biases that are ingrained. We have biases or prejudices or the way we see the world. So be very conscious of how some of those biases, some of those, glasses we put on. So to try as a leader to remove that and understand that some of us bring some privilege to all of this, and that's not helpful. Understand that people of many different backgrounds from your own bring tremendous value to your organization, help you understand their experiences, which is going to help you in communicating to all the various groups out there. So truly understanding your team members' experiences without bias, understanding your clients' experiences without bias. I think understanding within us what might be perceived as microaggressions and learning how to avoid that, learning the kind of language that can trigger someone and understanding how to avoid that, doing what one can to become a better ally to the different communities that might be within our own organization and our own client world, and understand that the more you understand these different groups, the better, the richer your organization will be. Organizations that have created an environment that is welcoming and open, where that knowledge is shared, where you bring on diverse points of view, these businesses do better in business. I mean, how could you not, being in the communication space, how could you not do better when you understand as many communities as possible and what their needs are, how they receive information and news? I mean, I think as PR people, we benefit from
It's
all of that.
natural for us to delve into our audiences to understand,
One would hope.
feel,
One
to
would hope.
try to see things from their point of view and understand how to meet them and be relevant where they are. And it's not about us, it's about them.
Bringing that level of understanding is just so important.
Well, I know we could go on and talk about leadership for hours. I feel like I got a little freebie refresher course here. Any final words of wisdom?
Your energy, your leadership influences so many people, right? It could be your team members, your peers if you have them, your boss if you have them, your clients, because as we said earlier, energy is contagious. You're influencing all those groups. You're having an impact all the time. So the question isn't, am I leading? Because you are. It's, how am I leading? And that's a deliberate decision. Do I want to be more than just an agency owner and a really great PR strategist and all that stuff? Do I want to take that step up and make that conscious decision to lead people, knowing it will be frustrating and stressful, everything else, but ultimately so fulfilling. And knowing that, I always say leadership is a two-part choice: your conscious decision to step up and lead, and their conscious decision to follow you. Just because they come into work every day, just because they're on payroll, just because they do their to-do list, that doesn't mean they're choosing to follow you. But when they do, there's nothing else like it.
How can people learn more about Ken Jacobs Consulting?
All kinds of ways. Our website is www.jacobsconn.com. They can email me, no surprise, Ken at jacobsconn.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Ken Jacobs, PCC. You will find me.
Well, thank you, Ken. Again, really appreciate the time with you.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.
And that leads us to the end of this episode of Shooting the Shift. Again, you can learn more about Ken Jacobs at jacobscomm.com. Email him at ken@jacobscomm.com or find him on LinkedIn at Ken Jacobs, PCC. And as always, you can visit shift-ology.com to learn more about Melanie and the entire Shiftology team, what we do to help our clients, and contact us for a free 30-minute consultation meeting. On behalf of the entire gang here at Shiftology, I'm Dan Toland saying thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Shooting the Shift.